So welcome everybody to my talk on Nuspell version 3. Also talked about Nuspell last year, and this year I'm going to give an update and also going to have some space for your input because we're here at a meeting with all experts. And let's see how this works. So these are the things I like to talk about, give an introduction on Nuspell, how it works, the technologies we use, the dependencies on spell checking in general in operating system, and what's upcoming. So in short, Nuspell is a spell checker. It's a free open software. It consists of a library and a command line tool, and it's written in C17. Our team consists of Dimitri from Macedonia and myself from the Netherlands. And I'm gonna go quite rapid through this. Spell checking is not trivial. Some people think it's just a long list of words. You check if the word's in the list, and then you know if it's spelled correctly or not. Usually for some languages, those lists would be endless. So all sorts of mechanisms have been devised in order to do spell checking, to support conjugations, complex morphologies, compounds, and so on. Please have a seat. So for more on the history of spell checking, you can check some talks I gave at FOSDEM earlier. The specific goals of Nuspell are to be a drop-in replacement for browsers, office suites, and all kind of applications that use spell checking. It supports the MySpell and Nuspell library dictionary format. The big differences with the other existing spell checkers is it's much faster, maintainable, it has less dependencies, it's more portable. We, as you can see later on, compile it on many different platforms. And also opens the door for more optimizations and functionality in spell checking in the future, where other spell checkers have sort of walked into a dead end at the moment. So it supports many character encodings, complex word compounding, affixing, rich morphology, etc., etc. This also discussed last time. And like before, we had now another grant from Mozilla, for which we are very thankful. Otherwise, we couldn't have had the resources to develop this spell checking library to where it came now. We had 2 projects, and we're in the sort of 2/3 of the second project. We had a version 3 out recently, and since last Friday, yesterday, we have packages for Debian and Ubuntu. So now it really starts to count and is usable because people don't have to compile it on the systems. You just install the package and start using it. We did a lot of testing compared to Nuspell. The differences are negligible. And the speed at the moment is three times faster, but it highly depends on which language you're using. And soon on our website will be a complete overview, updated overview of those speed ups and performances. So a little dive into spell checking. Won't spend too much time on that unless you have specific questions on that. This is sort of what it entails. And to give some examples that you find along the way, which you don't think about normally, is that certain languages, for example, something simple like going to uppercase or lowercase, is not trivial at all. So you can see, for example, for Greek, that you can go uppercase that way, but if you go back from the capital to this one, well, you know it can be only one, but it depends where it's in the word. And another example is the capital I with a dot above for Turkish, or the ligature IJ in Dutch, or the sharp S in German. These are things, if you would go back and forth going uppercase and lowercase, which you do a lot, by the way, in spell checking, you might end up at a word you don't assume you're ending up at. So with previous spell checkers, this was usually implemented with specific exceptions, and this information is contained in the Unicode library, the ICU library. So we use that instead of all specific kind of exceptions for supporting all different kind of languages. And the libicu library is pretty big, has pretty wide support on these specifics, and it saves a lot. It makes the spell checker much more efficient, and we don't have to make all these separate exceptions inside. We just rely on this. So the actual dependencies the library has is libicu and libboost, and nothing else. So it's pretty independent. So after spell checking, you want to have suggestions, and suggestions are generated in many different ways. The ones with a star are added new in the version 3. The other ones we already had. And some people ask, how do these suggestions get generated? Well, you can see there are all these different kind of ways of finding suggestions. They all got stacked in a pile and returned to the user like, these are suggestions with which you can fix your error. What's not yet in there, though, you can force it for a certain language, is to push a suggestion all the way to the top, to have that as a first suggestion, because you know that's probably what the user wants. But in the future we can generate all the suggestions and sort them, for example, by word frequency. And probably all of you had one time suggestions from the spell checker, and you think, what is that? So we try to make the world a little bit more boring by putting the most likely spelling suggestions at the top. Now, if you want to use this library, it's very straightforward. The API is compatible with how Nuspell does that. These are some helper methods to see what kind of dictionaries you got installed on your system. You can get the paths of the specific dictionaries, you can load one, and then you're all set to do some spell checking, which is even more boring, very easy. You just pass the word in, you get a boolean out, and if you have a vector of strings, you can have it filled with suggestions. So if you're afraid of implementing spell checking in your software, don't be. Just have it a go. You can see it's not rocket science. The rocket science is inside the library itself. So as I said, it's pretty widely ported because we have not that many dependencies, and the dependencies are on very standard libraries which are available for most platforms. So at the moment we have these compilers which it all works for, and that's it's sort of like maybe 99% of the world's computers that can work with that. Very shortly, these are the tools we use, not very important on if you want to use our library, unless you want to become part of the team, which you're welcome. So the things we changed in the version 3 was we upgraded to C17. We use CMake to build the library and the command line tool. The API is easier, as you saw before, how to set up spell checking. You don't have to tell which character encoding or locale you're using. It defaults to UTF-8. The compounding and suggestions have been improved. It's now 3 times as fast compared to Nuspell. We made an enchant integration, Debian Ubuntu packages, and the Firefox integration is coming up. But these things look all really nice, but we have to be maybe realistic, and maybe you can help with this, is that if you have Debian packages, how long you think you're away from getting included in a distribution release? Years. If you have a Firefox build, how long do you think it will take before it's out there? Months. Yeah. Enchant integration, it's already a package in Ubuntu, so it just needs to be updated. So that's like maybe only one release further down the road. But if you happen to be in a position where you can speed things up on Debian Ubuntu packaging, please help us out. Then some stuff which is new and I really like to have your input on is I made a short overview of packages which depend on spell checking. So you might know spell checking started with spell, then with iSpell, then we had aspell, myspell, hunspell, nuspell. We have also some specific spell checkers for Hebrew, Turkish and Finnish, but I left that a little bit out of scope in this thing. So how many of you work on software packages, like packaged stuff, or develop software which is packaged in Ubuntu, Fedora, Red Hat, Debian, doesn't matter? Okay, so how many packages you think are depending on spell checking libraries? Long list. So with these criteria I sort of made an overview. So on gspell you have these things depending where they get their spell checking, and gspell itself might get it in another place. So this is like fairly reasonable overview. Enchant is a well-known spell check abstraction. You can get spell checking, and it will see if you got aspell or hunspell or whatever installed, do the spell checking there and get it back. But you see also other spell checking modules or libraries are using enchant. So it gets this sort of like to focus on like these are all spell checking software packages, and these are all actual end users directly of enchant.
So you have like wrappers for wrappers, right? Enchant wraps your library, and then GTK spell wraps enchant, and then it's wrappers all the way up.
Yeah, so it's a concatenation of spell checking abstractions, wrappers. So we got iSpell, which is a fairly old one, and you would be amazed how many packages are depending on iSpell, like IPv6 toolkit. Why not? Then we got the Python 3 support for enchant, which caters to much more packages than enchant caters itself. I'll just go through it and then we'll have a small discussion on this. So hunspell is at the moment the best stable released spell checker. And as you can see, enchant uses it, Chromium. This is a Hebrew spell checker, iSpell depends on it, I don't know why. Scribus, Thunderbird. So we saw GTK spell. It took me half an hour to make up the text here. Was one less beer for me yesterday. And you can see the really old spell checker packages using this stuff, and you find everything in here. So I was like almost pulling out my hair. It's like, ah. So it gets worse. We also have aspell. Okay. So, well, that's an empty, yeah, here it is. So, for example, XML copy editor. Anybody knows this application? You can use XPath, you can go through XML, create XML, and so on. It also supports spell checking with aspell. There is a change to use hunspell, right? Hunting it for 3 or 4 years to get that into the final release, and they say, yeah, it should be there, it's still not there. So this is not only a story on the Nuspell release and integration and usage into spell checking, into software packages, but actually for a lot of stuff. And it amazed me that I made these kind of overviews also for fonts, that there can be so many packages depending on just 1 or 2 other packages, which if you pull them in, they sort of pull in the whole Christmas tree of dependencies, and you're stuck with it for years and years and years. So on one side, I'm curious, like, what kind of suggestions you have for, of course, the Nuspell spell checking library, what's going to make your writings much faster, better, how we can improve that, but also maybe a short discussion or questions in general on how to deal with this jungle of dependencies. That's my reaction to when I see this. Anybody try to get packages released and ran into this problem as well? Yes, there, please.
Ages ago.
And still, so is it?
Anything into Debian is like, you need a doctorate almost.
You need it?
It's so hard to get a package into Debian
Uh-huh.
that you might as well make a doctorate out of it.
Ah, okay. Yeah. So the reply was that you can better do it your own, roll it your own way than
You can
wait for
social engineer it in by being friends with the Debian developer. For them, it's like less overhead to just add one more package.
So, so the suggestion was to become friends with Debian package managers. So I spent the last 2 days in the Debian mini camp here at FOSDEM. And I handed out lots of stickers and so on. Maybe I should have bought more beers, but the people were very helpful to get me to get the packages properly. So we have Ubuntu and Debian packages. They build, they install, they run, and everything is super to the detail in the latest versions. I'm very happy with their support. So then I mailed some of them. So can you get that in stable because I'm giving a talk about it? No. But okay, I understand that there has to be checks and reviews and so on, and that takes time. And that's just the way it is. I respect that because it also ensures that there's quality software in the releases.
Yeah, but it is in SIT or in testing right now.
No, it's not. It should go, because it's a new package, it should go
Okay,
to
so
new and then it should go to unstable. And so getting it into releases, it will land there finally. That's not so much my problem. My problem or my worry. My worry is more that if you work with software, please use the latest version of whatever libraries you're using and try to relax on the dependencies, because this is so much. Anyways. Yeah, I had to upload the slides and then you have to type in how many pages it was. I was like, come on. So at the moment we support Ubuntu 19.10 and Debian 10. There is a build for FreeBSD. We like to build from these other platforms. If you have interest, please contact us, and we help you try to help us, or the other way around. At the moment it's C++ and C bindings via the API, but we like to have language bindings for Python, Java, and so on. So Ruby, whatever. Some people told me that there are excellent ways of generating language bindings. I looked into that, and they have like many different ways of doing it. And you can also hint us like, try this one to generate it. We will do the work. Just point us in the right direction, please. So that's sort of, in short, what Nuspell does, what we were up to last year, and the shock and awe of the dependencies tree we came across. Yes?
Do you offer plain C bindings as well, or just C++?
No, C and C++. Yeah, and if you run into a problem, just the question was, do we offer plain C bindings or C++ binding? We offer both C++ and C. And if you run into a problem trying to link or use our library, let us know via an issue. And thanks for your attention here in this FOSDEM afternoon. Unless there are more questions.
What languages do you support, and how do you add new languages? I mean, what would be the process?
So there are 9. The question was, what language do we support, and what's the process of adding new languages? The languages we support are the ones which are also supported by Nuspell. So these are already existing. We just use these. I'm myself involved in updating the Dutch language support. You can read the documentation and start building language support for excuse me, a language which isn't existing yet. If you have questions, also contact us. As an exercise, I don't understand it, but I implemented a Klingon spell checker just to see how that would go about starting from 0. And Klingon, for those who don't know, you can write it in Latin characters, but also in Klingon Unicode characters. So it was a good test to do spell checking on completely weird Unicode characters, which are way down, and it still works. So these 90 languages sort of reach about 200 countries or regions around the world, because like many languages are spoken in more countries. You have any specific language in mind, maybe?
Well, I work a lot with like smaller languages.
Like Elfish?
Endangered languages. Indarico. Or, I don't know, there are smaller languages that normally are not supported. So my question would be more also like how much time it would need. So if you now come up with a new question, for example, Klingon, how much time did it take to add the Klingon language?
It depends how much information you have on that language. So for that Klingon, I found a database in which conjugations were also available, and that helped making the affix file. But start with the word lists and then see if you can add language rules in order to shorten the word lists or extend the coverage of compounds and so on.
Question.
Yeah.
I'm new to this, so how does integration with Firefox or Mozilla work and LibreOffice? First question. And the second one, is there a system to enrich the dictionary and give it back to everyone? I know where you don't have something to open source in general that you could import.
So the question is, how does the integration go with Firefox and LibreOffice? That's just an API. As I showed, it's a shared library, or you can link it statically. It's just a few calls you make, and it's the same calls you make with Nuspell. So if you're going to migrate, it's meant as a drop-in replacement, so you don't have to rebuild, restructure your program in order to use it. And the second question is how to enrich the dictionaries with word lists. That's a good question. All spell checkers support personal dictionaries for maybe your name or the street you live in, words you'll use a lot which may not be in the dictionary for your country. But that's actually how I got involved. I moved from one installation to another installation, and I was moving along my personal dictionary all the time, and it grew and it grew. And it's like, yeah, but these words should be in the dictionary. So just you have to look up who is responsible for that, contact that person, and just send a list of words like, please include these. For English, it's a website called Scowl, maybe you're familiar with. On our wiki in GitHub, there's a whole list of all the languages which are supported, including the contact information. So you can go there, you can send an email or go to the website. They have their rules in order to include a word or not, and otherwise you have to keep it in your personal dictionary. And as you saw, the whole dependency challenge is also another challenge with personal dictionaries, because you have a personal dictionary for all languages you use in Firefox, in LibreOffice, in Nuspell, in Enchant, in Nuspell. So have a look around on your system, how many personal dictionaries you have and how much they differ. And they also use different formats. So see if you can contribute words to those upstream dictionaries and make them smaller. Lastly, I also want to thank my colleague who couldn't be here, Dimitri. He does a lot of the hard and complex work, and the Dutch Foundation Open Taal, who sponsored the stickers, which are available here at our FOSDEM stand. So if you didn't have any stickers yet, come by our stand tomorrow and get some stickers. Thanks for your attention.